This is Siddharth Alwalia. Welcome to the 100x Entrepreneur Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Prime Venture Partners, an early stage VC fund led by Amit Somani, Sripati Acharya, and Sanjay Swami. Prime is often the first institutional investor in category creating tech startups in fintech, SaaS, healthcare, and education, such as EasyTap, MyGate, and SignUp. To know more about Prime, visit primevp.in.
Today, I'm with Pankaj Makkar, Managing Director, Bertsman India Investments. Welcome, Pankaj, to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. It's a pleasure to be here, and although uncertain times, but this is the best we can do, and podcast is a great medium to talk to you as well as to talk to other people in the ecosystem.
Thank you, Pankaj. Pankaj, we would love to know more about your journey before Bertsman and what made you join Bertsman, and now how is the journey going on?
Well, I've been a strategic investor in India since early 2000s, and in my previous avatar before Bertelsmann, I used to do what we call as mid-stage private equity deals for a strategic house called Usaha Pegas. In 2009, I joined Bertelsmann in New York. They have a pretty amazing program called the Bertelsmann Entrepreneurs Program, where they handpick either entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial managers who have worked in such settings. And these managers can then go on building the next generation businesses for Bertelsmann. For me, I joined them in New York, but the idea was to then go and build businesses in India or Asia and so on. So in 2011, I came to India and I started the Bertelsmann Corporate Center. In 2013, after working for 2 years on the corporate center and working with our operating businesses, and we do have 4 or 5 key operating businesses in India like Penguin Random House, Arvato, Fremantle, RTL, and so on. We started kind of looking at making our first entry into the startup scene or the venture capital scene in the country, and that's when we started Bertelsmann India Investments in 2030.
So now your current focus is entirely on the startup scene, or there are other entities also you are giving your time in Bertsman?
Well, to be honest, I wear 3 hats. The first hat is at Bertelsmann India Investments, where majority of my time goes. But I do run the Bertelsmann Corporate Center as well, and within that, we do both back end and front end help and support to our operating businesses in India and outside. So from that perspective, I'd have multiple roles, and yeah, that kind of keeps us quite excited on the variety of topics we work on.
You have led investments in startups such as Tribo, Savan, Pepperfry, Agrostar, and Lending Card, and much more. The portfolio looks very diverse. What's the thesis behind, some of these investments which I just mentioned?
So that's a fantastic question. And to be honest, this is not the first time we've been asked this question. When we set up our venture capital arm in 2013, a lot of people thought that we would put together a media centric or at best a media and services centric VC fund. Very few people know that we are fairly big in supply chain, financial solutions, education, and other sectors as well globally. And the general mandate for us is to make investments in anything digital and anything education. Of course, we can do media and services as well. Services for us is BPO services. Having said that, a lot of them also get covered in digital. So that's the mandate for us, and that's and we've been doing it since 2013. The other thing that we started thinking about when we entered the market was that we didn't want to be a Me Too fund. There were so many funds who were or which were all focused on early stage investments, whether it's seed funds, Series A funds, and we thought that that market would get saturated very fast. By 2013, there were already strong names that were emerging, very strong partners for us like Axel, Sequoia, Lightspeed, Mayfield, and so on. And I don't think we wanted to create another fund which would directly go and compete with them. What we did realize was there was a significant market in Series D and Series C stage, which at that time we called as growth investing in a VC market. And honestly, we did not find even a single dedicated fund which was focused on that market. And we decided to exactly focus there just because of the wide gap in the market. And if you were to ask me what is common across our diverse set of portfolio that we have, they are all deals that we have done as Series D or Series C as a growth stage investor in the VC market.
So some of it are a mix of online, offline plays like Trebo, Pepperfry, Agrostar. Can you throw some more light on it? What made you, completely from a media house perspective to jump into offline and businesses which were outside the Bertelsmann core strength?
So honestly, as I said, Bertelsmann is not just media. We are a large conglomerate which obviously has a lot of media businesses, but we do have services businesses, whether it's supply chain, e-commerce, it can be education, financial services, and so on. And if you look at all the investments that we've made, if parts of these businesses are very similar to what we do in Europe or other parts of the world. So I think there's a consistent theme that we follow. Now, of course, are we a furniture maker? No, we are not a furniture maker. But do we understand how complex supply chain works? The answer is at Arvato, we do that. And we saw similar type of complexity in a company like Pepperfry as well. Now, honestly, for us, the idea is not to be sector specific, but look at capabilities and understand if there are capabilities which are very difficult to replicate. And that's what we call as a complex business. We like those businesses because we ourselves are in such businesses.
And one of the large exits for Bertelsmann includes Savan, if I'm right, by Jio.
Yes, we last year exited out of the company, and then we were very lucky to have partnered with Reliance Jio, and we do think that we found a very good home for our portfolio company there.
So if you can share, some learning from the Savan journey, because you were really early in the journey, and what kind of different phases the Savan journey went through?
Sure, no, happy to answer that. And I think we were very lucky to be part of such a great company. I still, by the way, I'm in touch with the Savan team or Jio Savan team, and they're just incredible entrepreneur and operators, really, really smart people. And I wish them all the very best going forward as well. As far as the journey is concerned, I think it was very typical journey that any VC would go through with a good startup. We did see hyper growth in the first few years of us investing in the company as Series B. We also saw a lot more competition. At that time, there used to be 3, 4 players who were fairly dominant, and Savan was able to race ahead and become the leading player in the country. And honestly, after some time, we did see a lot more strategics entering into the game as soon as they realized that this is a large market. And at that point, we realized that the best bet we had to make sure that the company becomes fairly viable and sustainable is to join hands with other strategic like-minded people. And we were lucky to have found the right home for the company with Reliance Jio.
Great. So businesses like Trebo and Pepperfry, we are sitting in April 2020. A lot of situations which we never expected to get into. How are these businesses coping up with the COVID-19 repercussions which we are dealing with today? And what are the learnings for other entrepreneurs which we can derive from, the actions being taken?
Look, I think not a few businesses, but all businesses at this time, whether big, small, need to be agile, and they need to adapt to the new reality. The new reality is that we are living in extremely uncertain times, and some businesses over time will go back to their normal. Some businesses will do even better. We think that a company like Pepperfry may end up eventually benefiting significantly after this COVID episode is behind us. The reason, of course, is that it is part of an online trend where people will spend less time looking at offline options, but may go significantly towards online, and that would benefit companies like Pepperfry. So from that perspective, I think that we want to make sure that we put our heads down, make sure that our runways are strong, and we stay relevant for the times after COVID. Of course, at the same time, it does give us a very good opportunity to not only fix our cost base, but also think about significant innovation that we can do to make sure that we continue to be the leader in the space that we operate in. And I think that is a general feedback I would give to all good internet companies, and that is how they should think of life.
And any change in consumer behavior uh, which we are going to see, post COVID, which you are currently working on or helping your companies prepare for those?
Yeah, look, I think first of all, very uncertain times. So even if we will give advice to portfolio companies or other advice in general, I'm not sure if they are all right advice. So with that caveat, I must say that in general, we feel that given that physical contact is a big issue related to this situation, anything which does not promote physical contact, uh, those businesses will pick up after the lockdown. Online, of course, will be the big beneficiary of that, or should be the big beneficiary of that segment. And in general, whether it's essential items today or non-essential items tomorrow, all of them will be the beneficiary slash in advantageous position going forward. If we expected adoption of consumer behavior or change of consumer behavior in 2 to 3 times or 2 to 3 years, sorry, they will get accelerated by a few years and may even happen, let's say, in a year's time from now.
So coming back to the portfolio, so what's been the process to get such high quality deals?
Look, I think the process is fairly simple. Keep your head down, talk to a lot of companies, make sure that you look at fundamental levers behind the growth of the companies versus artificial levers like using digital marketing to get scale. And wherever you find a good combination of great entrepreneurs, strong business models, large markets, and less competition, you try to make an investment in such companies.
And how do you help your portfolio companies, uh, with the scale up challenges, being a growth
Look,
partner?
I think what was very important for us was to realize that as a partner, we should choose the areas where we can help our companies. Thankfully, Bertelsmann has been in the venture capital business since early 2000, and so this was not our first fund that we started in India. Bertelsmann runs funds in US, China, Brazil, and India, and now making investments in other parts of the globe. And together, we have more than 200 portfolio companies, and collectively, probably about 20 plus years of work experience, and then, of course, a fairly large venture capital team. One thing that we knew from day one when we were starting was that we cannot handhold the company in every shape or form. And choosing the battles that we can fight was very important. For us, when it comes to value add, can we provide value add in 50 directions? The answer is yes, but can we actually on the ground do it to our satisfaction? The answer is no. So from that perspective, our value add, we started focusing on 3 or 4 things so that we do them very well. First is, of course, talking about the growth strategy and networks, which kind of goes without saying, and spending a lot of time with entrepreneurs to help them think about life. Number two activity where we significantly help our companies is about HR and hiring. When companies are in a growth stage, they have to hire significantly large number of people. That could, if a team is about, let's say, 100, 150 people, by the time we invest, in 2 to 3 years time, it goes to about 500 to 1,000 people. That's a lot of hiring. And also culture goes for a toss and so on. So we we started helping our companies think about some of these issues. Of course, we help a lot in sales and marketing as well. But if you were to ask us or ask our entrepreneurs, what is the biggest value add that Bertelsmann or any partner or team member from Bertelsmann has provided? I would say, and this came to us as a very pleasant surprise, and we fundamentally believe in it. It's the camaraderie as well as companionship that we can give our entrepreneurs by being there for them and talking to them in the middle of the night as far as business is concerned. Entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. And within that, if you can make some friends and you can talk to each other in a very informal fashion so that any inhibition or difficult situation that the entrepreneur is facing, you're able to talk out as friends. That I think would be the biggest value add that any VC could provide.
And how do you use your global presence to achieve portfolio's business objectives?
Look, I think first of all, each of us are empowered as well as incentivized on a local geography basis. So we make sure that our portfolio companies in India would continue to do the best, and we are 100% aligned with them. Number two, the good thing about Bertelsmann is the global network, and whether it's talking about brainstorming with other portfolio companies or learning from, for example, what is happening with COVID situation in China and relaying those action points as well as positives and negatives to our entrepreneurs in India. I think we do all of that.
And Bertelsmann owns 4 VC funds in Brazil, US, China, and India. How do you see the next 10 years of the Indian market as compared to the other markets which you are in?
But I think India market, thankfully, is following the China market. I would say we are probably in between. We have some similarities to the China market, and we have some similarities to the US market. And then there are certain features which are very unique with its own flavor also added to it. So from that perspective, I think if I were to look at the India market in isolation, we are quite excited to be here. We are long-term investors as well as operators, and we think that we have made a fundamental commitment to the country as well as the ecosystem. And we do hope that the next not only 10 years, but 20 or 30 years are very strong for India as well as our businesses in the country.
Pankaj, what are the major focus areas for Bertelsmann to invest in the coming years?
So that's a very good question. And to be honest, when we started the VC fund, I would have a laundry list of sectors that I would get excited by. And then I would go for the next 6 months and invest in very different sectors. I think the job of figuring out the sectors and opportunities should be with the entrepreneurs, and our job as VC should be to find those entrepreneurs who are quite excited about solving various problems and invest behind them. So from that perspective, I think I've been now very open-minded without having some specific sectors in mind.
And can you share more insights about the average ticket size which Bertelsmann comes in?
Sure. So as a Series B, Series C investor, we would typically come at with a check size of about $5 to $15 million, let's say average of 10, and typically take anywhere between 15 to 20% in a company. Of course, this is the first check, and we would then, of course, do our pro ratas in the next few rounds with the view of taking the investment amount higher per company.
Pankaj, coming on to a personal side of yours, which are the habits you follow which attribute to your success?
I can tell you that I'm a fairly organized person. For me, my life revolves around my calendar. If there's something on my calendar, then I consider it done. So right from my professional as well as my personal work, including, for example, going to the gym or even eating lunch, everything goes into my calendar. So from that perspective, it's my calendar that runs my life, and that has kind of helped me being extremely efficient. The second thing I would love to do, and I really do, is I end up kind of mixing work and pleasure, wherein even when we are working, then we are in a very informal environment with entrepreneurs, with my team, and so on. and that does not let me get fatigued as much as I otherwise would be if I would be in a very formal setting. That would obviously mean casual dressing. That would obviously mean having informal conversations, having furniture in the office would be a lot more casual in nature and so on. And I think that kind of helps you have a very relaxed mood wherein you are able to take tough decisions relatively easily. And on top of that, making sure that you're able to not get too fatigued, even if you've had long hours in the office or at this time at home. Lastly, of course, finding time to spend time with family. That is very important, and playing sports and pursuing some hobbies like reading some good books. I definitely try to indulge that over the weekend. And actually, with that, I love to play badminton. And that is where the Bertelsmann Badminton Championship was also born, where we do get a lot of venture capital firms and their partners to come together with us and play the sport. And we do a second edition with our portfolio companies. So from that perspective, we end up kind of mixing a lot of concepts between uh, the personal slash casual work as well as professional slash formal work. And I see that kind of brings in a lot of excitement in the work that we are doing.
And can you share, without naming, the top habits and the mindset among the most successful Bertelsmann portfolio entrepreneurs? What are your key learnings from them? If you are
Look, I
just to
think
share a candid conversation with any new entrepreneur joining Bertelsmann portfolio in a late night chat over drinks.
look, I personally think that a lot of entrepreneurs have brought in significant amount of skill set and value to even us as managers as well as human beings. So first of all, I can tell you without fail, all the entrepreneurs or partners we've had are fantastic human beings, and we would love to kind of go out for a drink with them. Or this entire question that people ask us, will you be happy if you are on a deserted island with one of your entrepreneurs? I think without fail, I can tell you that we will, at least I will personally be quite excited to be with any one of my entrepreneurs happily in a deserted island, just by virtue of how strong and good people they are and so much that we learn from them. Having said that, some of the good habits that we have seen successful entrepreneurs implement in business, not on the personal side, are of course ability to think far and deep. I think that's a very critical mindset, and making sure that entrepreneurs have an ability to see not 1 or 2 years further out, but probably 10 to 15 years further out. Having that vision and then using that vision to create deep capabilities within the organization is, in my mind, a recipe of how successful and sustainable businesses are built for which last a long time. And I think that I would say would be one such uh, skill set slash ability that some of our entrepreneurs or most of our entrepreneurs bring to the table.
And what do you think, in your observation, are those qualities, for the entrepreneurs? Because fundraising is measured as one part of success. Those who are able to fundraise aggressively and subsequently over a large period of time.
We don't like that concept too much, to be honest. There are business models where you need a lot more funding, and for that, the skill set would be good. But if you were to ask any venture capitalist what would his dream be, his dream would be to invest in a company which takes the minimum amount of capital, becomes profitable. So if you tell me that I have an option to back an entrepreneur who can build an average business but with the ability to raise a lot of capital, or back an entrepreneur who raises very little capital but can run the business so efficiently that he can do wonders with that little bit of capital, guess which one will you choose? The second.
Any examples on the second category which you would like to share?
Yeah, so a few companies on ours, but the one that kind of stands out is Eruditus, which is a company being run by Ashwin Damera and Chaitanya. And both the entrepreneurs have built a fantastic company with very little capital. Another company in our portfolio which has used very little capital to build a great business is Shiprocket. And to be honest, the list continues. It's not that these are the two companies. Even Rupeek as a company in our portfolio has raised less capital to build value till now. Licious would be another example. So actually, we like that idea, and most of the entrepreneurs would fit that bill. Versus finding entrepreneurs or business models which are cash guzzling.
But for example, looking at a model like Trebo, right? Siddharth and his team has built a model very frugally. How were you able, because the business model and the market looks very large, how are you able to spot that agility early on when you an entrepreneur are dating before the investment is made?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we don't like to do is don't invest in businesses which have very little profit margins. Because as more competition comes in, and let's say it's a category where profit margin is either in single digit or even as little as 3 to 5%, then in order to build a lot of profit at the bottom end, you will need an extremely large volume. And until unless the business is as strong as, let's say, Flipkart and otherwise and Amazon, you will not end up winning that game, which is why a lot of these businesses are winner take most businesses. However, in most of my businesses which we have invested, the gross margins would be in double digits, sometimes even in 30-40 percentage points, because that is how the structure of the market is. We like those businesses because from that business, for every $100 of revenue that the company will get, at least 30 to 40% of that will flow down to a gross profit level, which means there's significant room to become profitable with less capital. And if they continue to see adjacent opportunities or opportunities for their core products, they can continue growing. But these are definitely businesses which will become a lot more profitable much faster than businesses which would have single digit gross margin characteristics.
Got it. Pankaj, any final message, for the entrepreneurs who are, because I know it's a generic one, but entrepreneurs in their first few rounds dealing with COVID crisis, uh, how to, on survival, on keeping themselves and their team mentally healthy, because this is the most challenging situation I think the entrepreneurs of this generation are facing.
Yes. So, look, first of all, let me start by saying that while I would love to give you any and all advice, I am not in your shoes, and hence probably I can't even comprehend how difficult it is in your shoes, but I can try and imagine that. With that in mind, I would say the best thing in your pocket, of course, is cash and cash runway. You don't know how long this crisis will last. You don't know how the recovery will be. And hence, having at best a 18 to 24-month runway is needed in the business at this point. If you think that there are ways in which you can cut your costs, delay some amount of expenditure, and even grow less, that is absolutely fine, but create that runway. That's very important, and that's point number one. Point two for me would be to make sure that you go back to the drawing board and do what you do best, which is innovate. Use this downtime to create the most innovative solutions that you can do or think of for your business. At the end of the day, challenging situations leads to innovation, and we have seen that and heard various successful entrepreneurs do that on a proactive basis. So this is that time. Innovate as much as you can. And lastly, if you are a larger startup, use this time to fix your cost. There are very little opportunity that you get when you are running very fast to achieve top lines to fix your cost base. This is a time when you don't have to worry about top line. So fix your cost base, renegotiate your contracts if you need to, and make sure that you come out of the situation with a very strong financial architecture. And lastly, please be positive, please be safe, please spend time with your family. All sustainable long-term businesses which last for 40, 50, 60 years, Bertelsmann has lasted for 186 years, are built with a mindset that you will be running on a marathon for at least 10 to 15 years. Within that time frame, if 3-4 tough months come, then it is a blip in that entire journey. Please use that mindset to create your businesses. And once you are successful and you are sitting in the 15th year of your journey in the startup, you will fondly and positively remember this time from a business perspective, and it'll be a time that gave you a lot of strength, a lot of clarity, and the best innovation happened at this time. So with that positive note, I wish all the entrepreneurs the best of luck to build strong and successful companies.
Thank you so much, Pankaj. It was wonderful to have you on the 100x Entrepreneur podcast.
It's a pleasure, Siddharth, and thank you for having me here.